Hello everyone, my name is Yang. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about my Blue Stamp project and what I've done so far with my first milestone. So to start off, I'd like to just give a brief introduction about my project, as my project is one that's not a default Blue Stamp project, and rather one that's a student-defined proposal, something that I created on my own. Alright, let's get straight into the concept of my project. So imagine that this is you. Now, tomorrow at school, you have to give a presentation in front of the class, and you already prepared a script for your presentation. The first problem is that you're going to have to practice a lot before you humiliate yourself in front of the whole class. The secondary problem is that if you're anything like me, you're incredibly shy and you also have zero friends to practice it to. Now, what my project does is it's an AI that gives you live feedback and analysis on your presentation to give you tips and tricks for your speech so you can improve yourself. So as for my first milestone itself, what it did is basically make the program capable of transcribing speech files into text files. So as for this, it composes of two main parts. The first part was actually setting up my IntelliJ IDE and implementing a Google speech-to-text API that I'm going to be using as the baseline for my project. And the second part was actually implementing this ability to transcribe speech files into text files to allow user input into the program and to compare these two different strings or scripts to make sure that the API is not detecting something that's too crazily different from the script. Now, during this process, my instructor taught me something very cool called the Levenstein distance. Now, this basically is a formula for calculating how different two different strings are from each other, and I applied this to make my program as accurate as possible. Now, to actually demonstrate the functionality of my program, I used three examples to test it. The first thing is basically like a baseline. It's a simple sentence of me saying, "Hello, the weather today is nice," to make sure that the API is functioning properly. The second test was to take an excerpt from a famous speech by Martin Luther King Jr., his "I Have a Dream" speech, to make sure that this API functions on poor quality microphones as well as other people's voices as well. Now finally, the most important example and the peak of human existence, we have a 2012 interview from Justin Bieber's mom where she talks about Justin Bieber taking the trash out. Now, first, the sample example and the baseline. This is a sentence of me saying, "Hello, the weather is nice." I'm going to run my program. Now my program is going to ask me to input my speech's script here. Now I didn't have a script, but I'll input what I said. "Hello, the weather today is nice." Now after pressing enter, this should start calculating the file and the API should start calculating the transcription, and I'll output some specific statistics about my speech. So first is what the recognition software understood, and as expected, the API detected what I said properly, along with the punctuation added as well. Now, it also gives the speech recognition confidence, which basically shows how confident the API was when calculating my speech. And finally, it gives my speech score and some feedback. My speech score is how well the API detected my speech, if I avoided any verbal flubs, saying and it also gives feedback. For example, it says here, "Very good, the software could recognize your speech very well." Now here, let's try an example of Martin Luther's famous "I Have a Dream" speech and a short excerpt I took from that speech. So I'm going to run my program. I'm going to input the speech script that I took off a website. So the short excerpt is where Martin Luther King Jr. says,
5 score years ago, a great American in who...
I'll enter and see how this program does. So here we go. The speech recognition software only understood 5, score years ago. Although the speech recognition software had a very high confidence level, it didn't really accurately represent what Martin Luther King Jr. actually said. The speech score was therefore decreased, and the software gives feedback. The software recognized your speech well, showing that you had good clarity and pronunciation, but try to have more flow in your speech with less verbal flub or pauses. Now this is the second example, and it shows how my program isn't entirely accurate or smart yet, but this will come through after more experience and more programming. And finally, the most important speech itself, with the one about Justin Bieber's mom.
He would come home after a tour and I would say, honey, the garbage needs taken out. Mom, go take out the garbage.
This is a separate program that transcribes the speech itself without comparing it to some pre-existing script. I'm going to run the program and see how it does. Now this is what the speech recognition software understood, and this is not very accurate as shown by the speech recognition confidence because of the fact that there's a lot of background noise and other people talking, as well as the fact that the audio file is not in good quality to begin with. But generally speaking, this is relatively accurate and pretty close to what Justin Bieber's mom actually said. I hope you guys enjoyed this video that I made, and I hope that you guys also learned something from it as well. I know for a fact that I learned a lot from this experience, and I'm very eager to keep on working for the other goals that I have in mind. Thank you.